Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 12th of July 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. There wasn't a show yesterday because there was no gaming news and comment. Games industry, please do something controversial and interesting. Coming up in the show today, Amazon confirms that it's sold out of both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 pre-orders for launch day. China is likely to lift its ban on foreign game consoles. Epic's Tim Sweeney on the changing realities of the games industry, and Xbox Live price increase was apparently an unintended error. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. Amazon has confirmed that it's sold out of pre-orders for the Xbox One as well as the PlayStation 4, and other retailers have followed suit, with Best Buy claiming that it has also done the same thing. This is, of course, interesting for a number of reasons, one of which being that it will be at least 5 months before these consoles actually hit the market, and secondly, because of Sony's confidence that they could supply unlimited PlayStation 4 launch day pre-orders to GameStop. As you might imagine, that didn't actually happen, and the pre-orders at GameStop ceased for launch day units fairly soon afterwards. Fairly interesting, isn't it, to see just how quickly this stuff actually sold out prior to its release. This is hardly the first time it's occurred, but it seems to be the time when the most pre-orders have been made available, and yet it's still managed to sell out incredibly quickly. If we were to go back in time to 2006, the pre-orders for the PlayStation 3 actually sold out within hours. However, the supply was very much limited in the United States, so as a direct result, the console appeared to be more popular than it actually was. Of course, the PlayStation 3 got a fairly slow start with a lackluster launch lineup and a very small number of games in pretty much the first year of its lifespan. The interesting thing about that sale, and in fact the pre-orders of most of the last generation of machines, is that the pre-orders sold out a lot closer to the launch date. The launch date of the PS3 in the US was the 17th of November 2006. The selling out of the pre-orders was in October. I was working the PS3 and the Wii launch in the UK when I used to work at Game, and the pre-orders for the Wii were actually put up about a month before the actual system came out. They sold out fairly quickly, but we only got, I think, 22 systems, if I recall correctly, in the store. As far as I can tell, selling out of the actual machine 6 months or so before the release of the actual console is a first. I don't really remember anything selling out as quickly as that. And I think it's telling because we've gotten to the point where people are kind of clamoring for a new system. This console generation has dragged on for a very, very long time indeed, and the actual pre-launch hype has been higher than anything else, as far as I can tell. Let's just take the exception of the Wii out of the picture, because the pre-launch hype for that system kind of got out of control in different ways. Seeing that machine on, say, daytime talk shows and across all sorts of television programming that would usually never touch a video game system meant the entire ecosystem surrounding that console was completely different to anything we've seen before. These two machines are both very much aimed at hardcore gamers. PlayStation 4 more so, I would say, considering that Xbox One is trying to push it as an all-in-one entertainment system, but there really is no question that it's still targeting gamers, regardless of how mixed up their message got from the get-go. I think that perhaps it does tie in with heightened awareness from consumers. If you were to look at the launch around 2006 versus the launch we have now, the pre-release hype for that, the E3 coverage, the conference coverage, it's been watched more this time around than it was back then. Live streaming and up-to-the-minute coverage has increased when it comes to gaming, and I think it's starting to reach a much wider audience. Either that, or the audience was always there, they just happened to be more tech-savvy, and there are more ways to actually get that information this time around. It, of course, probably helped both systems that there was a massive storm of controversy surrounding the Xbox One. I honestly believe that the Xbox One actually benefited from it in the long run, simply because of that brand awareness. Now pretty much everybody knows there is a new Xbox coming out, as opposed to what would have happened if they hadn't really caused a stir. I have to wonder if so many mainstream organizations would have picked up on it. One way or the other, I do see it as good news. If you have that large early adoption rate, then that does mean that you get more companies developing titles for it. Obviously, developing exclusives is not something that, as a PC gamer, I really want to see happen, because I want to play these games, but a lot of these so-called exclusives seem to also be coming out on PC. They just aren't coming out on the competing console, which is fine by me. You guys go and squabble over there. We will sit in the royal box and laugh at you. For the last 13 years, China has banned the sale of gaming consoles within its actual territories, which is very strange considering that pretty much every video game console is built there. It now appears that this ban may be lifted on one condition, that these particular systems are built within a so-called Shanghai Free Trade Zone that is being set up within the country. Currently, all three major console manufacturers build their systems in China, with the companies Foxconn and Flextronics responsible for the manufacture of those machines. It is not yet known exactly who will be constructing the PlayStation 4 for Sony at this time, although we do know that Flextronics will be responsible for the Xbox One. As a result of this ban, of course, the Chinese market for games has been very strange, but also very much PC and mobile orientated. These kind of platforms that are not so restricted. The China Joy Show, which is one of the largest expos in the world when it comes to video games, has, as a result, traditionally been dominated by PC titles. The particular focus is, in fact, on MMO games. There are a huge number of social and MMO titles that are exhibited at that particular event. In fact, I remember that the PlanetSide 2 booth over at the last China Joy was absolutely huge. Companies like Blizzard have been attempting to make large inroads into that market, considering the recent expansion was very clearly aimed at Asian gamers, and they've also recently announced microtransaction-based boosts, which will, at this time, be tested and used over in Asian territories. As it stands, China is one of the largest markets in the world for online gaming, and the majority of those games are actually Chinese-developed, strangely enough, although it does make sense considering that foreign consoles happen to be banned in that particular country. We should also point out, of course, that Chinese censorship is a big problem. It has caused a variety of large delays to software from Western companies, including, of course, expansions for World of Warcraft as well as StarCraft 2. Various titles have been banned in the past, including Command & Conquer General Zero Hour for smearing the image of China and the Chinese army, which is very clearly not the case because China was horribly OP in that game. I am very curious to see how this plays out. I really am. It's traditionally a PC and mobile-dominated market, and yet now we may very well see console releases over there. How is that going to affect everything? It's insane, really. It's crazy. I have no idea how this is going to go, but it's a very exciting time, no doubt. Epic's Tim Sweeney has been speaking at the Develop conference in regards to the future of the games industry and made a couple of fairly interesting remarks. One of his biggest claims touches on something that has been the subject of much discussion as of late, and that is the notion of the mobile market taking away from the current core gaming market. Now, according to Sweeney, he says that you're not actually seeing console gamers giving up on console games and moving to mobile. There's just lots more new players who happen to enjoy mobile games. He went on to compare it to YouTube versus movies, saying that YouTube is great and accessible, but you'll always have people that want to sit back and watch a full movie, much like you'll always have people who want to sit back with a console game. I think we're going to see in the next generation just how true this claim actually is. The waters are just a little bit muddied right now to truly make an assessment as to what effect, if any, the mobile industry has actually had upon core gaming. Has it caused people to move away from core gaming into casual stuff? It does seem kind of unlikely, doesn't it? I mean, as arrogant as it sounds, it's like saying, well, I'm used to eating high-quality steak dinners, and now I'm just going to move over and eat McDonald's. That's probably not going to happen. You develop a certain set of tastes, you are unlikely to downgrade from that particular position unless there's a very compelling reason to do so. If you are traditionally a person that buys core titles, chances are you're not going to move down to mobile. It may take some part of your life, certainly. I play mobile games from time to time. I don't play a huge number of them, but I do dip into them. But would I consider moving from core games to mobile? No, because these things are, for the most part, little more than time wasters. There are very few genres upon the mobile device that I would actually like to play on them. Touchscreen does help with certain genres. I mean, you could argue point and click, you can certainly argue turn-based games are pretty good on touchscreens, they feel right, assuming of course that they're actually designed properly, and then you can look at stuff like card and board. But outside of that, the actual core game genres simply do not work well on mobile devices, and they probably never will. The idea of developing games for a mobile device that has a controller is a little bit dangerous, because you cannot assume that everybody has a game clip or one of those Moga controllers. You cannot assume that. It's a very dangerous assumption to make. You are deliberately limiting your audience there immediately, which doesn't seem like a good idea. And then you have to consider, do those people actually want to play core games on this mobile device? We've had this discussion in the past, and I've said that the fact that there is an increase in the number of devices which offer proper controls for a mobile experience is a good thing. The development of stuff like the game clip, as well as the Nvidia Shield, the Moga controller, the Ouya, the game stick, what this is doing is creating an installed user base. And once you have that installed user base, you know that you can safely make a game that is designed for those kind of people. But at the end of the day, core gamers are still looking for that high fidelity experience, and you are not going to get that on mobile devices. It simply is not going to happen. So as a direct result, yeah, I think he's probably right. However, we just can't really tell right now. I think that we've been looking too much at recent sales projections and saying, oh, well, this has gone significantly under expectation. Does that mean that the console market is shrinking? It could, or it could mean that people are just simply bored with the current experiences and are looking for the jump, because it has been such a long time since we have had that technological leap when it comes to games consoles. Once we get that, we will be able to see exactly what's happening. I think the pre-order figures for both of these machines are pretty promising, and as a direct result, that does promise an installed user base from the get-go, something that, of course, the Wii U doesn't have, which is why nobody's bloody developing for it. But that is not going to guarantee the kind of numbers that you need. Something like The Last of Us sells 3.2 million in a month. You are not going to have those kind of numbers on launch titles or anything surrounding that. It's always the danger with moving forward, and those titles are going to cost more to develop in the first place. Will they be of high enough fidelity? Will they provide the experiences that really engage people to actually make that successful? Because if they don't, you gotta consider just how much of a huge risk this could be. These are machines which are not backwards compatible. They're essentially severing the link with the previous generation. If these games cost a bunch to make, and yet you can't sell enough, then no, these studios are not going to keep making them. You see studios like Epic dipping into mobile with titles like Infinity Blade, and they are seeing revenues that are extremely strong on titles that don't cost that much to make, and you've got to wonder to yourself, well, why wouldn't you as a developer move over to that? Of course, the flip side of that is that if you don't have the clout, those markets are super saturated with titles, and as a direct result, your title may simply be lost in the ether. It's interesting, isn't it? I don't think it's a case of gamers moving over to mobile. I think it's more of a case of developers doing it because they see a possibility of making cheaper, quicker games and making more money overall with them. The question is, will that continue to happen in the next generation? I'm certainly hoping it doesn't, but there is a risk. There's no question about that. Games are very expensive to make. And finally, Microsoft claims that an increase in prices that was noticed by beta testers of the forthcoming change from Microsoft points to real money was in fact a mistake. A Microsoft representative spoke to VG247 and stated that we are aware that select regions experienced some incorrect game title pricing in the Xbox Live beta. This was an unintended error that we are in the process of fixing, and we will be reimbursing impacted beta participants for the difference in what was paid and what the price will be after the update is available to all players. As we are aware, of course, Microsoft is currently trying to transition out of its Microsoft points-based virtual currency towards a real money currency, which will be used on both the Xbox 360 as well as the Xbox One. This was originally hailed with a lot of praise, considering that people were just a little bit sick of the Microsoft points as a currency, especially considering that more often than not, they were sold in such increments that you could not spend them all. meaning that Microsoft was basically taking your money for nothing for the most part, and indeed encouraging you to buy more points so you could use the remainder of your points on something else. They would certainly not be the only company to do it, Riot being one of the most infamous, having designed its system specifically so that you can basically never spend all of your Riot points at any given time. However, this has recently resulted in complaints from certain gamers who claimed that in their particular territory, it would be more expensive to buy with real money as opposed to buying Microsoft points. The guys in the UK were the ones that pointed out that there was a price increase of around 33% in the Microsoft beta. However, as it stands, that would appear to be corrected. The question, I suppose, then becomes, once this stuff comes into effect, will it actually end up negatively affecting certain territories? It might. It very well might. It's worth noting, of course, that it was very possible to purchase Microsoft point cards via online websites, which in certain territories ended up being cheaper than buying it in the country in question. It would appear that Microsoft, by the looks of it, is looking to clamp down on that by going back to a real money currency, and I have to imagine that was part of their decision going forward, as opposed to simply being consumer friendly and all that good stuff. Alright folks, that pretty much does me for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. I'm also done for the week. Please have a safe and wonderful weekend. A reminder, our Pacific Rim Training Day video, which consists of myself, Husky, Jesse Cox, Dodger, Egoraptor, and John Tron, will be available on both the Polaris and Game Station channels today. It should be coming out today. God, I hope they're right. If they're not, I will strangle them. One way or the other, it's going to be fantastic. I've already seen it. It's hilarious. It's pretty damn cool. So please do go check out the Pacific Rim Training Day video over on youtube.com/Polaris and youtube.com/TheGameStation. Before I leave, I would like to give you the OC Remix track of the day. I would like to play one more, just one more from Balance and Ruin. It's got so many good tracks it's impossible to actually pick, but there is something just a little bit funky by Anti-Sign that I'd like to play for you. It is a remix of Johnny C. Bad, and it's called Johnny's Got That Funk. It is exactly what it says on the tin. Thank you very much, folks. I'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm.